So, Judy, do you know how to mute yourself when the service starts?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So after church, if anyone wants to stay on and chat, I'll stay on.
last Sunday, essentially, of summer, and hope that we will together develop a sense of community as we transition into a new season shortly. My name is Don Ludwig. I'm the Associate Pastor of Family Life, and our Senior Pastor, Scott Dalgarno, is actually in the house after a eye surgery and a week of recovering, and is all good to go and back with us. And his significant other, Eileen, is with us and gonna do the children's sermon, or be a part of it. Oh, you are? Okay, we're all good. So today's worship guide and video is always available on our website starting tomorrow and available on YouTube. If you're new with us and you want to be on the newsletter that goes out every Thursday, please let one of us pastors know or our administrative assistant, and we'll get you on the list. On the inside aisles of your chairs, there are some friendship pads. Just a reminder to fill them out. Let us know that you're here. And certainly if you're new, let us know that too, and we'd like to be able to follow up with you. So a few announcements today. First off, our final children's fair is today. So if you haven't been there in the last 2 weeks, today is your last opportunity. Bring your dollars, and they still have some great items for you. So right after church, in the children's craft art table in the Peterson Gallery. And just one other announcement, there are ants in our kitchen, so please just be very mindful of cleanup after you use it. And in 2 weeks is our official Welcome Back Sunday. We always have lots of things happening. We're gonna have a bouncy house for children, some other family activities, and it is Staff Sunday. So we are gonna be celebrating our staff members, not Scott and I, we're pastors. So don't recognize us, but if you can think about bringing cards and notes of appreciation for all of our children ministry staff persons and our music staff persons and our admin assistant, that would be wonderful, and they're going to be featured in the worship service. And then on that same Sunday, September 11th in the afternoon, is going to be Water to Wine at the home of Jean and Rick Collins. So details will come with that. So one final announcement from our choir director, Stephen Schaefer.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Schaefer, and I'm the choir director here at Southminster Presbyterian. So this Tuesday, choir rehearsals will begin again, weekly rehearsals, and this is not only an announcement because we sort of take a hiatus vacation during the summertime, but choir rehearsals will be on a different day this fall, and we're trying this out for a few different reasons, and I won't take up the worship time going into it, but it's going to be a new day, Tuesday, instead of Wednesday, and it's going to be a little earlier in the evening, so from 6 to 7:30, still 90 minutes, which is a good time, just a little bit earlier in the week and earlier in the day. So I'm going to be in the choir room right back inside there afterwards, going through some music. So if you have any questions or concerns or curiousness, wonderings, please come find me after the service and let's chat. All new and returning members are welcome.
Frank?
How long are they? 1 hour and a half. It's not too long. It's a sweet spot.
So it is, hope Scott and I both support this new change to an earlier time because we think that it will attract younger folks to the choir. So we're excited about this possibility. So if you want to sing, come on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So as we begin worship, today's lay reader is Sue Warninghoff. Ken Wilson, of course, on piano, Stephen Schaefer leading the choir, and the beautiful flowers this morning by Donna Bicoy. So let's take a moment to pause for reflection. Words from Hebrews 13:2. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without even knowing it. All who are able, please stand and join Sue in our call to worship.
Good morning. Creator God, you call us to hospitality, to give us as generously to others as you have given to us. Loving God, you call us to give you glory in the compassion we show to one another, to love without judgment of ourselves or of others. We gather as one body to worship the one who is love.
That was lovely. Will the children come forward? No, you were not. Here we go. From east and west to north and south, there they are. Hey guys, good to see you. School's almost starting. Is anybody already back to school? Anybody? Nope. Okay, let me ask you to do something. Actually, why don't you all stand up for a minute? I'll stand up with you. I'll stand up. If you were to demonstrate to someone without words that you were a strong, how would you do it? How would you make your body look? Oh, here we go. Oh, here we are. Oh, you're lifting, okay. And yet, oh, this is good. You guys are good at this. All right, it's fine. Now, okay, how about if you were really weak? Almost tottering over. Oh my God, there he goes, flat on the ground. Nice job. You just become like water, don't you? That was good. Okay, we can sit down now. The Apostle Paul, somebody in the Bible who lived just a little after Jesus, said, "When I am weak, I am strong." When I am weak, I'm really strong. That's something he learned from his own life. And I love that saying, and I think about it a lot. When I was in 7th grade, and I was 12 years old, anybody 12 years old? No. When I was 12 years old, I was in 7th grade, and it was fall time, and football had started, and we were playing at recess, at the long recess around lunchtime. We were playing football, and I was quarterback, and a friend of mine was the center. You know, the center is the one who hikes the ball. So we hiked the ball, and he's a jokester, so we hiked it over my head as a joke. Except it was a rainy day, really rainy day, and it was really slippery, and I slipped around trying to get the ball, and I was falling, and I put my right arm down. I remember this. All those that was many years ago. Put my right arm down, and it snapped. I even heard it. Now, you haven't lived until you've heard your bone go crack. That was not super fun. But anyway, I broke right about there, and I could see. I was kind of crooked, you know, and it scared me. I never knew that could even happen. And so I went to the hospital. It didn't hurt a lot, but I went to the hospital, and they put it back right. And then they did something. They put a plaster cast on. I don't even know if they do that anymore, do they? I don't know. What? Fiberglass. Yeah, this was plaster. It was making this little art object on my arm. And it dried really hard, and it went over my thumb, and I couldn't write anymore with my right hand. And anybody here right-handed? A lot of you guys are right-handed. I couldn't write with my right hand. So, even though my teacher said, you don't have to worry about homework, I learned to write right away with my left hand. I thought it was a kind of fun challenge, and it didn't look very good, but he could read it. Mr. Cohn could read it, and that was okay. And years later, I found out it's really good when you're right-handed to do things with your left hand, because then your different part of your brain learns new things to do and gets certain talent and stronger, even though I was weak. And I'm thinking about that now because a week ago, just a little over a week ago, my right eye broke. Well, something in my right eye broke. The retina tore. I didn't even know it. All I knew was, like last Thursday and Friday, there was like this moon was setting in my eye. And at first I thought, oh, my nose has an interesting shadow. I never saw that before. And then I realized there was something else going on. So my right eye wasn't working very well, and so I had to come back from vacation from Minnesota to Oregon and have eye surgery last Saturday, a week ago, last Saturday. And boy, that was a lot of fun. No, it didn't hurt at all, really. Seriously, didn't hurt at all. They fixed it with lasers and a gas bubble. Anyway, I don't want to talk. But the reason I'm talking about it is I can't see out of my right eye right now. It's like there's a gas bubble in it, and I can't see anything out of it. But I can see out of my left eye. And I'm thinking that because I was right eye dominant. My right eye is the main one I look at things with. You know, if I'm looking through a telescope or something, I always look with my right eye. Now I have to see everything through my left eye. I wonder if the same thing is happening that happened when I broke my right arm. I wonder if I'm going to be stronger because I have been weak, because my right eye broke. Well, I hope your right eye never breaks. And it's a very rare thing. Of course, I get the rare thing. That's fun. But it reminds me again, the Apostle Paul is right. When I am weakest, I can really be strong. Dear God, thank you for the ways you teach us. We're not always super grateful for things that happen on the football field, but we give you grace and peace and pray that you bless us in every way through all the crazy things that happen in our lives. Make us alive to one another this week, and help us to remember that when we are weak, sometimes we are really strong. Amen. Thank you.
Michael is setting up for something beautiful right after I speak. If you haven't heard Sandy play, you're in for a treat. And Michael, too. Yeah. This is the Greek Testament reading, Luke 14:1, 7 through 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited to take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, brothers, sisters, or relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Our theme reading this morning is from Henri Nouwen. It says, "Reaching Out, the Three Movements of the Spiritual Life." Hospitality means primarily the creation of free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom, not disturbed by dividing lines. Now we have that special music.
I've got to get this up in front of me. Am I on? Okay. So the song that we're doing this morning is based on the tune Holy Manna. And Holy Manna is one of the oldest folk song hymns to make it into the current Christian literature. William Moore is credited with the tune from the 1800s. And you'll find the Holy Manna 3 times in our hymnal, all with different lyrics. So I thought, well, I don't know anything about this song, so I was going to listen to it on YouTube, and there's all different kinds of variations and arrangements out there, from Celtic to gospel. And my eye caught the words, sacred harp singing. And I thought, oh, wow, we're going to hear a bunch of harps playing. But no, sacred harp singing is a form of rural church music that dates back to the 18th century New England, or century in England. But it's a cappella, excuse me. And in recent years, it's had a resurgence in popularity. Michael's going to play the original Holy Manna hymn, and then after that, we're going to show you what Brant Adams did for the instrumental arrangement.
Yahoo. Before COVID, there was shape note singing every Saturday morning at the downtown Portland Library. Some of you may remember that. Yeah, in the top floor, they'd fill that room with music. I just happened on that accidentally once, and they were all singing a cappella. But I don't know any Spanish, so it didn't work for me. Dear God, thank you for a wonderful morning, for this cool stretch before the heat begins again. It's good to be together. Open our hearts. Amen. So I want to begin this discussion of Jesus's take on table etiquette by looking closely at table etiquette in Ireland from a woman who goes by the name of C.E. Murphy. She says, in Ireland, you go to someone's house, and she asks if you want a cup of tea. And you say, no, thank you, you're really just fine. And she asks if you're sure, and you say, of course you're sure. Really, you don't need a thing, except they pronounce it ting. You don't need a ting. Well, she says, then I was going to get myself some anyway, so it would be no trouble. And you say, well, if you were going to get yourself some, I wouldn't mind a spot of tea at that. So long as it's no trouble and I can give you a hand in the kitchen. And then you go through the whole thing over again until you both end up in the kitchen drinking tea and chatting. In America, someone asks you if you want a cup of tea, you say no, and then you don't get any damn tea. I like the Irish way better, she says. Well, we take this stuff, this dance we do with one another totally for granted, right? But look, we're all well trained by our families of origin, right? By our own cultures about these norms, and it's all really deep in us. So I'd like to take some time to plumb down on this right now. By way of that, here's a little personal history of mine as kind of preamble. 15 years ago, I was pastoring a church in Ashland, the one in Oregon, and I kept hearing in the national news about city after city across the country beginning a program like one in Multnomah County called Portland Everybody Reads. Where a committee in the city would choose one book for everyone to read, so the whole city had the same reading experience. Beaverton, of course, has its own version, too. Now, Ashland, a college town, was full of readers. And I couldn't figure out why, bursting as it was with people who love books, it hadn't tried something like this. At the time, I was writing a regular column for the local newspaper, the Ashland Daily Tidings, and I had the thought that I could start an Ashland Reads Together program and promote the whole thing through my column. Easy peasy. All I had to do was assemble a small board, and together, we'd pick a book and invite the author to come if the author was still living, and he or she would make the rounds of the high school and the college. I had access to a little bit of money for such a thing, so I made a visit first to my friend Amy Blossom, who was a reference librarian at the city library, and asked her if she'd join the board. Well, she gave me an odd and meaningful look when I brought this up and said, in fact, that she had been trying to get the head librarian at the county seat in Medford to start just such a program for 6 years, and it just wasn't happening. So she asked me to put my idea on ice for a week, and she would bring it up at the next library staff meeting and see what they'd say about it. Well, within a week, knowing I was fully able to launch an independent program in Ashland, the county decided to start a Jefferson County Reads Together program, and they wanted to know what book I'd choose for us to launch the thing. So without even trying, I had shamed them into getting a county-wide program going that Medford had soft-pedaled forever. And I had accomplished it without doing a single thing and without lifting a pinky finger. And so I said, well, how about To Kill a Mockingbird? And actually, they chose something else. They chose The River Why. But eventually, after I moved away, they got around to Kill a Mockingbird, because race difficulties being perennial, right? Harper Lee's book never, ever goes out of date. It's like the voice of our collective conscience on the subject, right? Anyway, I bring that up because when I read the two of the lectionary passages set for our worship today, I thought immediately of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you haven't read it or seen the movie, you really ought to do that. It's really worthwhile. Within the first 30 pages of that book, you encounter the following remarkable story that goes perfectly with the story in our gospel lesson. It's the first week of school for Scout Finch. Her first grade teacher is Miss Caroline, who is also brand new. At lunchtime, Miss Caroline surveys the lunch boxes that her students have brought and notices that one little boy, Walter Cunningham, doesn't have a lunchbox. And so she offers to lend him 25 cents to buy his lunch. Well, Walter refuses, and Miss Caroline doesn't understand, so Scout stands up and explains in front of the whole class that Walter doesn't have lunch because he's a Cunningham, and the Cunninghams are so poor that they could never afford lunch and couldn't afford to pay back the 25 cents. And it's a difficult moment, and later at the lunch break, Scout's brother Jem invites Walter to come home with the two of them to have lunch at their house. Now, Calpurnia, remember her, the beloved housekeeper and cook, sets another place at the table so that the three children and the father, Atticus, sit down to eat. And Walter asks if there's any molasses in the house. Calpurnia brings a syrup pitcher, and Walter pours molasses on its vegetables and potatoes and his meat. And Scout says he would probably have poured it into his milk glass if I hadn't asked him what the Sam Hill he was doing. And Atticus shakes his head at Scout, and Scout says, but he's gone and drowned his whole dinner in syrup. This is when the real table etiquette lesson in the book begins, and it's a lesson for Scout, not for Walter. It was then that Calpurnia requested my presence in the kitchen, says Scout. She was furious. She squinted down at me. There's some folks who don't eat like us, she whispered fiercely, but you ain't called on to contradict them at the table when they don't. That boy's your company, and if he wants to eat the tablecloth, you let him do it. He ain't company, Cal. He's a Cunningham. Hush your mouth. Don't matter who they are. Anybody sets foot in this house is your company, and don't you let me catch you remarking on their ways like you were up high and mighty. Your folks might be better than the Cunningham, she said, but it don't count for nothing the way you disgraced him. If you can't act fit to eat at the table, you can just sit here and eat in the kitchen. So remember Jesus' admonition. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Add to that these words written to one of the earliest Christian churches, words which are found in the epistle to the Hebrews. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without even knowing it. Together, those passages underscore, I think, a really important biblical theme. The heart of what it means to follow Jesus is reflected in an amazing way in the whole business of hospitality. The life that's been redeemed and reconstituted by the love of Christ will be characterized by openness and hospitality. And the exact translation of hospitality is not, in fact, hospitality, but the love of strangers. Think of that. The love of strangers. And the reference about entertaining angels without knowing it refers to one of the Bible's oldest stories, something from the 18th chapter of the book of Genesis. In that chapter, 3 strangers visit Abram and his wife Sarah, who receive them graciously. They bring water to wash their feet. They slaughter a calf. They bake some biscuits. They bring something to drink. And it turns out that the three guests are either on a mission from God or one of them is actually God. It's a really difficult passage to translate. They are there to tell Sarah that she's going to conceive in her old age and have a child. And Sarah laughs at the absurdity of their suggestion, but later she gives birth to a son, Isaac, whose name, remember, turns out to be laughter, right? So looking back to that old story, the idea the writer of Hebrews is reflecting on is that these were angels. These were messengers of God. And if Abraham and Sarah had not extended hospitality to them, none of us would know the true miracle that's represented in the birth of the little laughter child. Let mutual love continue, the writer of Hebrews says to the early church. Let love among you be genuine and powerful and real. And don't forget the stranger. Don't forget to be hospitable. So the sense of it is that sometimes people in the church can enjoy loving one another so much that they become cliquish, right? A closed company, so that an outsider won't feel welcome at all. In fact, he or she won't even be given a chance to break in. This is, in fact, endemic in churches, especially ones about our size. We enjoy seeing each other so much that we can't wait to greet one another when we all show up on Sunday morning, and poor Pastor Don can hardly do the welcome because of the din of goodwill that often happens. Same thing happens at coffee hour. So the strangers, the new folks, may find it difficult and awkward just standing there by themselves. But it's even more serious than that. In the story we heard read this morning, a Pharisee invites a group of important people to a dinner party, and Jesus is one of the guests. People then, and of course now as well, were invited to dinner because the host was interested in them or was related to them or wished to establish a reciprocal kind of relationship with them. Dinner parties are, of course, usually pleasant affairs, and if the food isn't great, well, maybe the conversation will make up for that. But not at this dinner party. The way the gospel writer Luke recalls it, because as soon as the guests are seated, Jesus criticizes the other guests for the way they jockey and scramble to get the best seats at the head of the table. Sit at the lowest place, he says, for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be lifted up. That must have made everybody uncomfortable. But Jesus is just warming up here. He also scolds the host, criticizing him for his choice of guests. One New Testament scholar commented on this passage saying, I'm certainly glad I wasn't at that dinner party. Jesus leveled everybody. Don't invite these kinds of people, Jesus says. People who will, in all likelihood, return our invitation. Instead, he says, invite poor people, the blind, the bent over, people who live on the other side of the tracks. Jesus proposes that his host cross a very important social, political, and religious boundary here. Not unlike Calpurnia extending hospitality to a poor little white boy who pours molasses all over his vegetables and mashed potatoes. Jesus proposes a human community based on something other than social custom, right? Economic reciprocity, right? Or intellectual affinity. He proposes instead a human community based on nothing but the fact that God is its creator, and therefore each person is a precious child of God, every single one of them. Now, the Quaker theologian Parker Palmer wrote a whole book on this subject called The Company of Strangers. And he suggests that modern life cultivates a suspicion of strangers. In fact, he points out that we have organized our lives so carefully that we spend much of our time in private and rarely, if ever, allow ourselves to say more than hello or excuse me to a stranger. We live and we eat and we work and we travel and we shop and we engage in leisure time activities with people like ourselves, people we choose to be with, time being short, and all the while we regard the stranger as, maybe even sinister. I'm thinking of this because I have the Nextdoor app on my phone. Anybody else? And it is always blowing up, always, over suspicious strangers in our neighborhood doing odd, not in our neighborhood things. But listen to this. According to Parker Palmer, our mistrust of the stranger is the thing that actually ends up making the places we inhabit unsafe. Here's his reasoning. He says, our suspicion of strangers causes us to avoid certain places, particular neighborhoods, so that, quote, when we begin to think of certain spaces as unsafe, we withdraw from them, and as we withdraw from them, they do become unsafe. He says this, space is kept safe and secure not primarily by good lighting and police power, but by the presence of a healthy public life. By the presence of a healthy public life. I think that's absolutely true. I mean, just consider, it's fascinating that one of the spaces people often stay clear of in Portland is the park blocks. But on Saturday morning, when the farmers market motors up, that area becomes the most vibrant and friendly plot of land in the whole freaking city. And it's that way for 6, maybe 7 hours. And then it goes back to being a place to avoid at all costs. Just think about that for a little. Here, Parker Palmer's idea again. Our spaces are kept safe and secure not primarily by good lighting and police power, but by the presence of healthy public life. I wonder if it might be true that the Christian church over the centuries has lost track of the heart of the gospel. When it comes to the teachings of Jesus. The church has spent so much time focusing on sin and moral purity and putting up walls, when our fundamental purpose as Christians is in fact to live in the world in a way that shows the hospitality of Jesus and makes the place safe for every one of us. Can you imagine churches no longer locked up tight as drums? Safe and secure, protected from strangers the way they are? Can you imagine if Christian churches said instead, come in. This building we built and maintained and loved so much is not ours at all. It's for you because you're a child of God. Now, I know property committees would never go for this. I can just hear the blowback about it. People would trash the place, they'd spill stuff on the carpets, and they'd carve their initials in our communion table. Well, let me tell you a true story about a church, a city church, in fact, that had fallen on hard times, that was named and is named Antioch. Just Antioch. Well, Antioch's sell-by date as a church had just about arrived. They had once been quite large, but their membership had dwindled down to, a couple dozen. And the few funds they could raise went into their very, very part-time pastor's salary and keeping the building, the historic building, at least leak-proof. All they really had left that they were proud of was the building. So they made a decision. What have we got to lose, they asked themselves. Let's keep our building open 24 hours a day so that anyone on the outside can come in at any time and pray. Well, some people did come in off the street and pray when they did that. But then they noticed that every night about a dozen non-prayers came in too, and they spent the whole night sleeping on the pads in the pews. Well, someone in the church who didn't like this new openness, turned them in to the insurance company. And then the insurance company decreed that they would not be allowed to unlock their building overnight anymore if they wanted to have their fire insurance. So the church elders looked for another insurance company, but none would allow them to keep their doors unlocked 24 hours a day. So the church elders met and decided to do something about that. They locked the church doors, and then they put the key to the front door under a rock. And then they painted a word on the rock, and the rock said, the word they painted on the rock was the word key. And one of the members explained, we haven't had much luck attracting people to our church. Those who are members are very sporadic. The folks who come into our church during the week or stay here at night, they really want to be at our church, even more than the rest of us. What can we say? They've shamed us into letting them in. Parker Palmer. Our spaces are kept safe and secure, not primarily by good lighting and police power, but by the presence of a healthy public life. So, as we look to begin a new year with Labor Day next week and Welcome Back Sunday the week after that, how is it with Southminster in this regard, right? We have a sign, big sign, on the front of the building that says that we welcome everyone. Is that the case? You know, I'm not suggesting it isn't, but I think we need to ask ourselves that pretty often. Do we really do that? Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without even knowing it. Amen. you. Please be seated. Let me thank you for your goodwill, your prayers, your expressions of love. I appreciate it so much and feel really good and feel really glad to be here. Who would you like us to pray for at this time? Would you like to offer thanks for anything or offer concerns? Wally has something in mind.
I don't know whether it's just your love or your prayers for whatever you call them, but there's no cancer in the bladder. There's no cancer in the kidneys. Just got a couple of stones to get rid of.
Oh. Hey.
I have a joy. Our grandson Jefferson graduated from Diamond Ranch Academy, getting his high school diploma on Friday in St. George, Utah. And we flew down, and you have to understand what Jefferson went through to get this high school diploma. He was adopted at 10 and a half from Southern Columbia. He virtually had no schooling, could not add 0+1, and he's been in school almost continuously for 9.5 years. And so now he's graduating from high school, and it's just a total joy.
That's wonderful.
I wanted to mention that on Zoom, people wanted to thank Michael and Sandy for the amazing music.
Oh, Eileen has something. Oh, wow. Okay.
Someone on this side. Prayers for the man who stopped at the church this morning, hoping that we could help him financially. He's on his way to Texas. His name is Leo. He's on his way to Texas for the funeral of his 8-year-old daughter. And just prayers for the heart of a lion in this man.
I want to thank everyone for their prayers. I'd like you to continue praying for Ed. He went in the hospital August 9th with pneumonia and heart problems, and when we were getting ready to transfer him to skilled labor, he developed COVID.
Oh, no. Okay. We need to remember Ed, Laura.
I wanted to prayers for Joanne Wakeland's granddaughter, Artis. I just read a Facebook post yesterday that she's about to have a procedure for her heart because she's had some problems with heart rhythm issues, I think. And I think it's this week. I'm not positive, but tomorrow, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Need to pray for our children.
My friend who was challenged in many ways at her 92nd birthday, her daughter had open heart surgery just a week or so ago, emergency. And fortunately, her daughter came out with really good recovery, and her daughter's spirit has even enlightened. And I'm very thankful for that. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else from Zoom? No? Okay.
Hi. Prayers for my family, for my brother Zachary. He's just getting out of an abusive relationship and entering into a single father life of 3 children. So prayers for that transition.
Okay. Thank you. Let's join in prayer. God, as we remember what it means to reach out to strangers, we are so grateful for a time like this when our circle becomes so much larger because we care about so many people who are maybe outside of what Southminster is. But we remember that we're bringing your children to this place and making them part of an extended family that we claim to be part of. We raise up a lot of real children with heart problems and concerns that we have that are great. We also pray a prayer of praise and thanks for ones who really come through and are amazing and make us proud to be parents and grandparents. We pray for our elderly who are having troubles because of age. We still have not forgotten those who die every day of COVID-19 and wish so that it would be assuaged or not be something that takes dear ones from us. We thank you for all that makes our lives rich, for the wonderful opportunity and privilege it is to come and worship in this place together. This place becomes richer every Sunday because we are here and because we seek to honor you. We pray all these things in the name of the one who gathers us, even Jesus, praying together our corporate prayer. Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven, may the hallowing of your name echo through the universe, the way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world, your heavenly will be done by all created beings, your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trial too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. Let us now receive our morning's offering. So let us remember once again that life indeed is short, and we have not much time to gladden the hearts of those who traveled away with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and may the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, keep our hearts and minds today and tomorrow and down all our days. Our service is ended, but we invite you to linger for the postlude and the craft fair.